refugee form, yeah. The 10th Congressional District is on the border with Detroit, and Detroit is a sanctuary city. Not only are they a sanctuary city where they're giving refuge to these people, ISIS has clearly said that they want to be able to use that stream to infiltrate. They are here. We need to recognize that they're here, and we ought to be doing things locally and pushing some of those federal resources that are being blown on wasted money and start pushing those resources back to our law enforcement, because they're the ones that are going to be taking that 911 call when they come in there and start disrupting and blowing up our communities. We're going to stay with that. I'm going to continue with that resolution when I get to Congress, and we'll put an end to sanctuary cities and the refugee program.
Thank you, Mr. Pavlov. I didn't really want to take a question, but I'm going to take one question. It seems to me, Mr. Mitchell, that some of your opponents have pointed out that you ran for this office 2 years ago, but from another district. Seems to be some of the criticism from some of your opponents is that you're either an opportunist or you're a carpetbagger. Also, some of your opponents, not me, have said that you're spending a lot of money. And some say that you may be buying a congressional race. How do you address that? For the other candidates here, is it just sour grapes? Are you jealous of Mr. Mitchell? Mr. Mitchell, you go first, please.
You want me to deal with that in 1 minute? Thank you for that.
1 minute.
Okay. Let's deal with the whole concept of buying an election. You all should be offended by that. First, my opponents in this that are elected officials have all outspent their opponents exponentially, 160 to 1. You would be amazed at numbers. Any questions? Check the state reporting. Now they whine, well, he's spending money. It's my money. It's not money I squeezed out of other people, out of PACs, various other people, that in fact I'll also be beholden to. It is my money to do with as I wish, to deliver a message to the voters. To change a system in which career politicians had the leg up because everyone knows who they are, all the PAC people know who they are, and they want to support their buddies. You've heard people on the stage who say, oh, I remember you from wherever. Yeah, there's a club. I've been told multiple times, guess what? You don't get to be in the club because it's not your turn. Well, you know what? Donald Trump stood up to the club, funded his own primary, and he kicked their backside. I plan to do the same on August 2nd, I assure you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Pavlov, are you in that club?
In the club of buying a race?
No, in the career politician.
No, I'm not a career politician. What I would say is I'm a representative. That's what I'm going to Congress to do. And hats off to Paul Mitchell for being able to spend $6 or $7 million to get to Washington. That's not consistent with our district. That's not consistent with the people that we represent. But he certainly has that opportunity to do that. And what I say is spend your money how you want, but think about it this way. You have some service people here like Senator Sanborn and Representative Forlini who get up every day to go and work on your issues and work for things that matter to you. And I would just say this is the only district that I want to run for Congress in, and I'm glad to have your support.
All right, because you mentioned another name, I'm going to get Mr. Mitchell, $6 or $7 million, that's what he mentioned. Is that what you're spending?
Well, it's creative bookkeeping on Phil's part, but that's not the first time. More importantly, let me suggest that the day the senator announced he was running, he called me for my support and a contribution. So let's be serious about it. I lived 1.5 miles from Phil for quite a period of time. I have a division office in St. Clair. Our corporate office was in St. Clair to 2015. But when you're running for office, you make whatever tail you can and hope it sticks. Good luck, Phil. You're losing.
15-second rebuttal.
I get 30 seconds. And the issue is,
go ahead.
Not only have I got contributions from, restart the clock.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've got contributions from Paul. Paul had lobbyists in Lansing. Paul lobbied me hard for welfare money to go to his programs. But more importantly, when Paul decided to run for city council in St. Clair.
Did you call him up and ask for support?
Yeah, and he called me to help him win a city council seat in St. Clair that he resigned for shortly thereafter. He let the people of St. Clair County down. I just don't think that the congressional district is something that you can walk away from. So,
Mr. Sanborn, you were mentioned as well. Go ahead, minute answer, go ahead.
Mentioned as what?
Well, someone mentioned, I think you're, the person.
The lifetime politician thing, I'm not sure how that.
Climb on in, have some fun.
I'm not sure how that carries water because I've spent 23 years as a probation officer in Macomb County. And frankly, I've been going in and out of homes and workplaces, checking on probationary wards for the most serious of crimes with frankly nothing more than a notebook to protect myself. I'd like to have you guys try that out. And as far as being a lifetime politician, I served in the House, I served in the Senate, and I left 5 years ago to return to my job in law enforcement. That's where I've been. I'm going to stay laser focused. I'm going to be taking the message to the streets. You see, we've knocked tens of thousands of doors over the last 16 months, and I've heard it time and time again. I'm not sure these guys get it. People in Shelby Township expect you to come to their home, look them in the eye, tell them what you stand for, and ask for their vote. That's why you're seeing thousands of Sanborn signs on people's front lawns, and the big signs too, because we have the grassroots support, and I haven't taken one special
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sanborn. Mr. Forlini.
Well, let's go back. I mean, I've got to go back to when I ran as against an incumbent for township supervisor, and I beat a Democrat incumbent to be supervisor, outspent quite a bit. I then ran for state representative 6 years later up against an incumbent Democrat again, and beat another incumbent Democrat that had these special, all the dollars, outspent me probably 5 or 6 to 1. So it's not the money that counts. People are looking for people that are going to represent them. I feel as if I wouldn't have won those races if they didn't feel as if they had somebody that's going to have their back. I've had the citizens in my districts back ever since I've been in there because I work hard. And in my elections, in my last 2 elections, I didn't outspend my opponents that great, and the Republican Party didn't have to spend a penny on my race, even though I sit in a 50-50 seat.
You're not seeking money from the Republican Party this election?
I'll seek it from anybody who wants to give it. I got a website, so send it in.
I just thought I'd say. Mr. Van Ash,
Thank you, Charlie. I appreciate
how much
it.
money are you spending in this race?
Quite a bit. Enough to win it, that's for sure. But let me just answer your question. So I served 27 years so Mr. Mitchell can run a business, earn millions of dollars, and be like Hillary Clinton, move into a state and run and, go at it. But here's the other thing. Let me finish, please. And I'm not the career politician, as you guys have seen my commercial. I'm the servant leader.
Sure.
So 27 years, going from E1 to Air Force One. Then when I retired, I took a small high-tech renewable company to a multi-million-dollar company. So I have proven trusted leadership in the defense sector as well as the private sector. And I'm not running as a politician. I'm running as a servant leader because my whole life has been about service. Service to this district, our Great Lakes state of Michigan, and to our country. I served you guys with pride and honor. And I want to continue to serve you as your elected representative come August 2nd.
Thank you, Mr.
very
Van
much.
Ash. 15 seconds. Are you Hillary Clinton?
No,
Are you Hillary Clinton?
my buddy here, when he left the Air Force, formed a lobbying forum called Union Square with an operative from the Clinton administration, and until this spring, it was up on a Facebook page and on a website. Anybody want copies of it? We have it. So to suggest that he's a business guy, suggest that he worked with a Clinton operative and he wants to call me Hillary Clinton. There you go.
Mr. Van Ash.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you work?
That's what.
Is Mr. Mitchell right? Did you work for the Clintons?
No, absolutely not. So Union Square Strategic, this actually proves a point why I'm the best elected representative for you guys, is because I know how to cross party lines. So the owner of Union Square, the owner of Union Square Strategic, he's unbiased. He's not Democrat or he's not a Republican. So that's an untrue statement. Untrue statement.
All right, let's move on. Kathy, bail me out, please.
Yes. Yeah, that was fun, gentlemen, but let's get back to some policy. The 10th Congressional District has quite a proliferation of wind farms, wind energy, as well as ethanol and sugar production. Now, all of these industries enjoy a long tradition of federal tax credits and federal subsidies. In fact, Paul, you say on your website that you support continuing the National Sugar Program, which is estimated to cost consumers and businesses $3.5 billion a year. Republicans generally, though, stand on a very proud platform of fiscal responsibility and letting free markets decide winners and losers in the economy rather than crony capitalism and corporate welfare. As Republicans in Congress, how would you support eliminating these subsidies or supporting them, and why or why not?
Mr. Mitchell.
I agree with Trump. Free trade and fair trade. And the reality is, You do not have fair trade when Brazil controls 75% of the sugar market and subsidizes it to a great extent. If we did not have the sugar program, the 10th congressional districts and a lot of farmers would be in serious problems. So it incrementally costs people, and those that complain about it are largely the candy makers. By the way, I really like Hershey's, and some of the cereal makers. But the reality is, without it, we'd have a lot of people without their farms, without equipment. The same thing in terms of ethanol. Ethanol, the reality is, if we don't support the RFS, we put ourselves at risk in our energy program. We don't subsidize it. It's an RFS requiring a certain production of that to go into the system. It's not a direct dollar subsidy, despite all the whining and crying about that. So I support them. I'll continue to support them, and I'll support them till the cows come home.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Van Asch.
I mean, subsidies are definitely needed in different industries, right? And to promote free market. But free market definitely doesn't only have to be fair. It has to be mutually beneficial and equitable. And we've been getting our butts kicked. And one thing I love about Trump, and he says we send politicians to negotiate our international deals when we should be sending our best and brightest, our businessmen and women. And I have that experience as a businessman to go over there, and I'm one of the best negotiators, if not the best negotiator, up here on the stage, that I know how, when I was managing my multi-million-dollar programs, defense contractors with Boeing and Lockheed Martin, basically I had to educate them why it was important to not be self-serving, but to look at America as a whole and what's benefiting the products and goods and services that they're providing to the military. You take that same type of knowledge and you share that with the different entities when you deal with these international trade policies.
Thank you, Mr. Van Asch. Mr. Pavlov.
Well, I mean, if you look at the diversity inside the 10th Congressional, not only do you see sugar in production, you see corn, you see dry beans, and not only has our thumb really ignited under this advanced production and the high yields, we're sending those products around the world. And the thing that we have to remember with ethanol is that it's homegrown energy. It's energy that is grown in our district, that revenue stays in our district, it's clean burning, it's safe, it reduces down ozone emissions, and it puts a lot of people to work. Now, you talk about the subsidies. If you take a look at the cost and the price of land in the thumb today, it's running at about $10,000 or $11,000 per acre. That's the market for that land, and that has produced the kind of stabilization and economic security that the thumb needs. But we do get to the trade issue and make sure that those trade agreements that are negotiated are upheld and they're held accountable so that our products can go around the world.
Thank you, Mr. Pavlov. Mr. Colini.
We have the number 2, our economy, our agriculture economy is the number 2 diverse agricultural state in our nation. We have products from cherries to milk to wheat, and we just have more than just about any other state as far as diversity. What we do lack, though, is the ability to add value. We do some of it, but we need to add value. We're shipping product that we produce, the farmers produce in our state, out of state because the regulations in our state make it prohibitive for them to add value to that product. Adding value to that product adds money in their pockets, can have co-ops and get things running. That's deregulation and making deregulation work. So the DEQ has put a stop to a lot of these practices of adding value. I worked for Land O'Lakes years ago. They took cheese and turned it into cheese sauce. That added value. These are the types of things we need to do in the state, is to add value to our products, and it'll take care of these subsidies.
Thank you, Mr. Perlini. Mr. Sanborn.
Yeah, I absolutely support the subsidies to agriculture and alternative energies. And frankly, if you're going to represent, and Phil was spot on. I agree with everything he just said, because if you're going to represent the 10th Congressional District, you darn well better be able to fight for our farmers. So I'm absolutely. And if you go up into Huron County and the northern regions of the 10th Congressional Districts, you're going to see the alternative energies. These alternative energies are great options because they make us less dependent on the oil cartels, for example, when you have alternative fuel energies as far as not just ethanol. But it creates an opportunity for job growth. When you say agriculture and you combine tourism with agriculture, that's the second greatest revenue source for the state of Michigan. And I think I'm just about out of time.
15, if you want to take another 15 seconds, you're okay. You have 15 seconds on that yellow one. It's okay.
Well, so I'm going to be fighting, and I'm sorry I'm not creating a lot of fireworks, but when I do my fighting, I do it as a statesman. So I want to tell you, Phil's absolutely right. He's absolutely right.
Charlie, he mentioned me again. He mentioned me again, and I want to point out the fact that he's absolutely right that I'm absolutely right.
You did mention him, I guess, that's true.
I did.
All right, thank you. Let's have JJ follow up on that question.
Sure. To anyone in particular, Charlie?
Well, let's go in the order that I have. How about Mr. Sanborn?
There it is.
That's fine. Mr. Sanborn, you all have talked about subsidies for a variety of progress from agriculture to renewable energies. And I know that, Mr. Van Ash, you have a company who probably gets subsidies from the federal government for your, I'll let you address that when you have your time. But I want to narrow it into energy in general. The Democratic nominee for president famously said recently that her energy policy would put coal miners out of work and coal businesses out of business. I'd like to know, first of all, if you believe that climate change is man-caused, and if you do, what would you do to address it? If you don't, how would you deal with the tidal wave of support that climate change is getting, not only here, but around the world?
Well, there's very little that I agree with regard to Hillary Clinton. Very little. And as far as putting the coal miners out of business in Pennsylvania where she said that, that was just a stupid thing to say. I'm sorry, I'm not being a statesman. So what was the other part of your question? I'm sorry, JJ.
Man-caused climate change. Obviously, the push by the Democrats is
Al
to
Gore went
eliminate
into
coal for climate change.
I'm sorry. Al Gore went in as a congressman. He was worth $4 million, and when he left the White House, he was worth $2 million. He's flying around on his company plane, trying to sell the story of climate change. I'm not a scientist. I can't say that for sure that it exists, but I sure can tell you there's a lot of profiteers like Al Gore that are making a fortune off selling that. Now, I've heard Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity and some of the people I respect very much talk to that effect. And I think there's a lot of people that are profiteering off the concept that I think it's overblown.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Pavlov.
Well, look, if you like low-cost, reliable energy, then you're for coal. I'm for coal. But here's what the Obama administration has done with this false narrative about man-made global warming. It's not true. We're actually global cooling for the last 39 years. Here's what's happening in the 10th Congressional District. We have 2 power plants in St. Clair County that are scheduled to close over the next 4 years. There's 350 people that work at each one of those plants. Those are our friends, those are our neighbors, and those are the people that are fueling Michigan's turnaround. You are not going to be able to hold the military and the defense industry here in Michigan. You're not going to have the big 3 here in Michigan when you're spinning their machinery with windmills and solar panels.
If I'm correct, this district is run entirely 100% by coal.
Well,
We
no,
are
there's...
chiefly fired by coal here, are we not?
Well, it creates an enormous amount of our baseload generation, but we have, 1,500 windmills, we have solar panels that are also feeding our grid. But I would just say this, if you want to see skyrocketing residential electric rates, go for the coal plan that Hillary Clinton is putting.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pavlov. Mr. Mitchell. Charlie.
So I didn't hear you,
Mind if I
Charlie.
just break in there, though? Is there a disagreement there, Phil, between you and Alan? Do you, I mean, the wind...
They love each other. No, what are you talking about?
The wind subsidies there are driven by Al Gore and the global warming lobby. This district is benefiting from those subsidies. Are you opposed to...
This district
the wind
is not
subsidies?
benefiting from those subsidies. I will tell you, in 2008, when we rewrote our energy plan for the state of Michigan, I voted against the windmills because everybody in this room, was paying between $5 and $15 every single month to keep those windmills spinning. You cannot create an economy based on marginal and intermittent wind patterns in the thumb and expect to have those high-paid jobs that are heavily intensified in electric generation in your state.
Hold on, Mr. Seymour, do you want a quick response? Hold on. Go ahead, Mr. Seymour.
Well, I don't disagree with what he's saying. I think the importance is, and not just coal and so on, but I think we have to put the emphasis on, and I know I'm going back to the oil cartels. We need to have alternative fuel sources so that we're less dependent on the oil cartels, for example.
Okay.
And I'm all about creating competition with alternative sources of energy.
Okay, Mr. Mitchell.
Thanks very much. I want y'all to mark this down. It scares me a little bit, but it's a big part of what Senator Pavlov said that I agree with, and don't give him 15 seconds. Climate change, first it was we're going to have an ice age. Then the global ice caps were melting. Now we are cooler than we've been in 38 years. The science, it's all fuzzy science. Meanwhile, the EPA is passing regulations like the Clean Power Standards that are going to close 9 power plants in Michigan, and think it's going to cost us $9 billion. Now guess what? That comes out of all your pocket. That will come out of your pocket, it will damage our economy, and we allow that to happen. If we want to deal with environmental standards in the world environment, we need trade agreements that actually include environmental standards for the people we trade with, so that in fact, we get a better environment in the world.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Van Asch.
Thank you. Definitely, I'm for, renewable energy. Obviously, running a renewable energy company, Navitas Systems, in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And no, we did not receive any subsidies. Actually, Navitas was created as a result of Obama stimulating A123 technologies. They gave millions of dollars, and they didn't manage it right, because anytime people get stuff for free, they wasted it. They end up going bankrupt, and as a result, Wang Chung, a billionaire company, China company came in and bought that. What they couldn't buy is the Government Solutions Group, which Navitas, I led the merger to the Advanced Solutions Group. So that answers that question.
I didn't mean it to be an accusation, by the way.
No, it's not a problem. I just want to make it for clarity. Now, however, you got to understand the jet stream. So the jet stream goes from west to east. So we're over-regulated here in America with EPA standards. And yeah, they're good for us, and it keeps us clean air and that. But the problem is the rest of the world's not doing it. They're not up to the same standards. So when I visit China, I come back, you got to wear a mask over there for a reason. The cancer rate is just exploding. And all that comes over here from west to east, and we're getting that. So if we're going to have the same EPA standards, we need to make sure our international partners are adhering to the same thing.
Thank you, Mr. Van Asch. Mr. Forlini.
So you agree with me?
So that is part of it. The regulation around the world, if we're going to compete, we're getting sucker punched by other countries that are producing cheap energy. And let me just say this, I believe all of the above is good. I believe in wind, I believe in solar, I believe in nuclear. I believe that if we don't, in coal and natural gas, I believe that we need to have a full 4 or 5 prong attack on energy as a matter of national defense. If we can't supply our own energy needs, we're going to be subjected to the whims of other countries. So, I visited a nuclear plant down in Monroe, and in a room about half the size of just this one ballroom, they were saying that in 30 years, that's how much fuel rods were spent in 30 years. That's not bad. The better part of it, though, is Jimmy Carter outlawed the recycling of those fuel rods, which would have amounted to about the size of half this table here. That's what we need to start looking at, being smarter about our energy, not talking about it from a political standpoint, but a solution standpoint.
Thank you, Mr. Forlini. New question, Rocky.
Let me first start off by asking, by a show of hands, how many of you support repeal and replace of Obamacare?
No, absolutely.
So all of you. Okay, so here's my
Does that
question.
shock you?
It's very shocking.
If they didn't, they had to go to a different meeting.
So who does this first question go to, Charlie?
Mr. Forlini.
Mr. Forlini, I'm going to start with you.
Yes.
Tell me what you would keep of Obamacare and what you would specifically replace it, and I want specifics from each one of you.
So why do we have Obamacare? Because there was a perceived problem to begin with, and so politicians thought that government was the solution. Unfortunately, Obamacare was not the solution. It created another bureaucracy, another huge problem of more government in our lives. Healthcare costs have not gone down. Healthcare costs have not gone down at all. I'm a health insurance agent. I have a division that just does health insurance. And I'll tell you, we have not found any savings in the healthcare arena whatsoever. So what would I replace it with? Well, there's all these pages, all this bureaucracy. They have said, well, a child needs to stay on a healthcare plan until age 26. You know what? That's probably a good solution for a lot of families, particularly when kids go to age 26 in college. That's a good solution. That's about a paragraph. We go to another paragraph, no pre-existing conditions. All right, there's another paragraph. We haven't even filled a page yet in regulation, and we would have solved most of the problems that are out there, that were out there.
So just so I'm clear, there's nothing in the Obamacare that you would keep?
No, I think you just
Well,
said
he said those two.
two parts
those
that
are
you would
two
keep
simple
and two
things.
parts that you would replace them
And
with.
it's a much more broader question and much more complicated. That's why we've screwed it up, is because we let the bureaucrats and the politicians come up with the answers. They don't have the answers.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sandmore.
I would vote to repeal it and replace it. I'd replace it with Trump Care, because picture, it's January 3rd of next year, and Donald Trump is being sworn in, and he's going to roll out his plan. And in that, something I definitely agree with is he's going to have interstate competition so that you can go across state lines. Competition creates choice, creates lower prices, creates quality. And we need to be able to cross state lines to purchase health care. And I've heard Donald Trump talking about it. I'm looking forward to him becoming our next president and repealing Obamacare as we do it. Got to go. It's been a burdensome nightmare. So we repeal and replace it, and we open up to...
So just so I'm clear, there's nothing in Obamacare that you like?
Well, and Tony said the concept of having insurance covered for children up to, well, young adults to 26 years of age was
That's
certainly
okay.
an attractive feature, but that's easy to roll that into the next health care plan.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Van Ash.
Thank you. Definitely repeal and replace, and no, there's nothing I would keep in that thing. It was 20,000 pages just jammed down the American people's throats. It was a partisan bill. It was against unpopular belief. And now as Americans, and we here in our 10th district, we're paying more for health care and receiving less quality. This is a shame. So nothing I would replace. Keep in it. As far as what I would do to recommend going forward, if there was some type of reform and if we can get some movement on this, I would definitely open it up for the states to go across the United States, so to stimulate that free market and competitive advantage to drive down the cost. I always say this, practitioners and patients, they should decide what's best for their health care, not bureaucrats and politicians in D.C.
Thank you, Mr. Van Ash. Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you. By the way, I call it the Unaffordable Care Act, not the Affordable Care Act. Is there anybody in this room that's seen $2,500 a year in savings in their health care? Anybody at all? I thought not. The reality is, because of Obamacare, we now have more IRS agents than FBI agents or Secret Service agents. Why? Because they want to make sure they get our tax money. What I would keep in it is, we mentioned earlier, the coverage for people until they're 26. In fact, my children have used that at times. The coverage for people that are pre-existing conditions so the insurance companies can't foreclose them. What we need to change? Buy insurance across state lines. More importantly, allow people to buy the type of insurance they want. Effectively, in this room, you all have the same insurance. You're all paying for it in one manner or another, whether you need it or not. And the reality is, most people would benefit from options. They would benefit from the option of getting a catastrophic policy and being able to get a health savings account that they could do for day-to-day medical care, and it's precluded by Obamacare. We need to repeal and replace it and put those factors in it.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Kavanaugh.
Yeah, I signed the pledge to repeal it and replace it. What I'm not going to replace it with is requiring the grandmothers in our country to carry maternity insurance. I am certainly not going to move into a policy that puts coverage instead of risk. I mean, we've tipped this thing upside down. The Medicaid expansion that was pushed through the Michigan legislature is costing the state hundreds of millions of dollars a year. That was the implementer for Obamacare. We're certainly not bringing that back. The other thing is we're going to put the patient at the center of the transaction. And what we have to be able to make sure is that you have that relationship back with your doctor. And when we do that, you're back in control of your health care. You have that personal relationship. We're not going to let your records go on. We're going to get rid of the durable medical good tax that's killing families. And we're going to get rid of this runaway cost hikes and the $20,000 to $30,000 deductibles that many in our country are facing.
Charlie, Senator Pavlov brought it up. I want to know from the members that were in office in the state, I guess Representative Forlini and Senator Pavlov, how did you vote on Medicaid expansion?
I voted against it because it was going to crush it. It was this three-year promise. There's a reason for it.
Representative Forlini?
I voted for it, and I'll tell you why we voted for it. Because they were already taking our money The federal government was taking our money, and without that, it's like, all right, I'm going to vote against it, but I'm not going to take the money back. That would be a foolish vote.
All right, thank you.
All right, Henry, start a new topic, new question here. Ask Mr. Van Ash, please.
All right, yes, gentlemen. 20 years ago, this district was represented by a left-wing Democrat named David Bonnier. And
There's memories.
David Bonnier was the leading opponent of NAFTA in Washington, a trade agreement that was overwhelmingly supported by Republicans. 20 years later, the Republican nominee, presumptive nominee for president, Donald Trump, is now the leading opponent of NAFTA nationally. I'm confused. Do you all agree with David Bonnier that NAFTA should be torn up and renegotiated?
Mr. Van Ash.
Yeah, I do. I would have to answer it this way. I believe in free trade, but it has to be fair and it has to be mutually beneficial. And I would even go above that. It has to be equitable in favor of the United States. And so if we need to readdress that and relook at that and open it back up to make sure that we're benefiting more, absolutely. I'm surprised that presidential candidate Trump would be such a strong proponent for it. I understand his reasonings why, but it needs to benefit us a lot more than the other countries.
You don't think it
To be
does?
clear, no, Trump is opposed to NAFTA, just as Democrat David Bonnier was.
So I would definitely be opposed to, in favor of reworking it in favor of the United States benefiting more from it, if it was going to be, or you just do away with it, because it really hasn't benefited us. It's really hurt us.
All right, thank you, Mr. Van Ash. Mr. Folini.
I'll tell you who it hurt more than anybody is the American worker. The American worker got hurt more than anybody else in this whole process. We have jobs that have gone overseas and companies, multinational companies that have moved their operations, and it's gone back and forth. But